We
His
don't
story
host people
serves
like
as
you
a
here.
powerful reminder
Step
of the
away from
strength
the
of
desk
perseverance
before I call
against
security
overwhelming
to remove
prejudice
you.
and a profound
The
testament to the
words
truth
stung like
that
a slap
genuine
across
change
the
often
lobby.
begins with those
Sharp,
brave enough to
loud, and
challenge the
deliberate.
invisible rules
Guest
that uphold
paused mid-step.
injustice.
Eyes
Elias Thorne's
darted.
legacy reminds
Voices
us that
fell
true
silent.
power lies
The
not in the wealth you
receptionist's tone was
accumulate but in
neither
the
rushed
barriers you
nor
break for
mistaken.
others.
It was
If his courage
intentional.
inspired
The
you, hit
woman,
that like button, share
unshaken,
this story, and
gently
subscribe to
adjusted the
Real
handle
Black
of her
Stories.
suitcase.
Join
Her
our
gaze
community as we
steady but
continue to
quiet.
shine a light
The
on the unsung
receptionist
heroes who fought
narrowed
for a
his
more
eyes.
just world.
He
What
tapped the
invisible
desk twice
barriers are
as
you
though sealing
committed
his
to
verdict.
breaking?
To him, she didn't belong here. He didn't even ask her name. From the corner of the room, a tall man in a dark security uniform took notice. His steps toward the desk were firm, paced with the confidence of someone used to deciding who stays and who leaves. "Ma'am, is there a problem here?" His voice was loaded, not with concern but with expectation. Expectation that she would leave. The woman calmly responded, "I have a reservation. I'm checking in for the summit." The security officer didn't check. He didn't ask for details. His hand hovered near his radio, ready to call for more staff if needed. "I'm going to have to ask you to exit the property immediately." Her voice remained controlled. "You may check your system. My confirmation number is—" Before she could finish, he interrupted her. "We don't need that. This is not open for negotiation." The dismissal was total. His stance told the entire lobby, this person isn't welcome here. The staff and the crowd around them had already passed judgment. They saw a problem where there wasn't one. But the man, the security guard, the receptionist, they missed the most important detail. They had no idea who she was. In less than an hour, the hotel senior board would be in an emergency session, their leadership questioned, their reputation hanging by a thread. In the next few moments, this hotel, this very building, would regret who they had just tried to remove. The silence tightened as the security officer waited for her to back down. But she didn't. Have you ever been dismissed like this? Have you ever been told you didn't belong somewhere you had every right to be? If you've ever stood in a place that was supposed to welcome you, only to be treated as if you were invisible, let us know in the comments. Like this video, so stories like these continue to be heard, because this isn't just her story. It's a story many of us know too well. Before the marble lobby, before the polished suitcases and grand receptions, there was the South Side of Chicago. It wasn't just where Dr. Imani Diallo was born. It was where she learned to stand, to push, to persist. Her earliest memories were not of ease, but of watching her mother lace up her worn shoes before dawn, preparing for another double shift. Her mother's hands bore the quiet calluses of someone who never had the luxury to slow down. Rent notices, faded bills, and the weight of responsibility pressed against the walls of their small apartment. But her mother carried it all with silent grace, never asking for sympathy, never pausing long enough to notice her own exhaustion. When neighbors shared what little they had, Imani learned that community wasn't measured by wealth. It was measured by presence. It was measured by who shows up when things are hard. There were moments when the noise of the streets crept through their windows, moments when danger whispered nearby. But her mother never let fear settle in their home. Instead, she filled it with ambition, books, and soft lessons whispered between long shifts. Work hard, yes, but work smart. And never let anyone tell you where you don't belong. Imani carried those words with her. They became her armor. School became her sanctuary. While some sought escape in distractions, Imani sought opportunity in every textbook, every lecture. She wasn't the loudest in the room, but she was often the most prepared. Scholarship offers came. So did the weight of stepping into rooms where faces like hers were few and far between. Each new achievement came with quiet resistance, subtle but undeniable. There were handshakes that hesitated, questions that seemed harmless but were wrapped in disbelief. There was a constant feeling that her place needed to be justified, again and again. Still, she pressed forward. Years later, she founded Ether Innovations, a company that didn't just follow the movement toward sustainable energy, it led it. Her team developed solutions that caught the attention of global leaders. Invitations arrived from across the world, recognizing her vision, her leadership, her undeniable impact. Yet, in the corridors of power, the weight of being one of the few remained heavy. She carried it not just for herself, but for the generations who came before her and those who would come after. Names like Ursula Burns and Dr. Mae Jemison weren't distant heroes to her. They were reminders that the path, though possible, was often walked alone. Being at the top did not remove the burden. In many ways, it made it sharper. She understood that her mistakes would be remembered longer, her successes questioned more often. She understood that respect, in certain spaces, was not always immediate. It was conditional, fragile, dependent on being proven beyond doubt. Leadership roles like hers are not often held by women who look like her. Visual overlays would reveal the truth. Out of hundreds of top corporations, only a fraction are led by individuals from her background. Statistics would whisper what many experience loudly. Those numbers reveal that messages sent from names like hers are sometimes answered later, or not at all. Studies confirm that small courtesies, such as greetings with proper titles, are less likely to be offered to guests with names associated with certain communities. These details are not mistakes. They are patterns. Imani understood this all too well. Yet, she chose to keep walking. She chose to build, not simply for herself, but to widen the door for those who would follow. Her story was never about asking for permission. It was about claiming space. She did not come to the Viridian Grand Hotel looking to prove her worth. Her worth was not in question. What would soon become clear to the hotel staff was that they had not simply dismissed a visitor. They had dismissed the very person who would stand before the entire summit and reshape the conversation. They had overlooked someone they should have seen. And in doing so, they would soon be forced to confront not just their mistake, but the structure that made it possible. Because people like Dr. Imani Diallo don't just break ceilings, they change the foundation beneath them. The Viridian Grand Hotel glowed beneath golden chandeliers, its entrance lined with polished stone and uniformed staff who moved with rehearsed grace. Valets rushed to assist incoming guests, each greeted with warm smiles, light conversation, and smooth gestures toward prearranged check-ins. A woman in a midnight blue suit approached the desk just ahead of Dr. Diallo. The receptionist greeted her by name, extending her key card before she even spoke. Luggage was whisked away before her hand could leave the handle. Another guest arrived, a tall man with a visible corporate badge. He was met with a complimentary upgrade, his check-in completed with efficiency and visible enthusiasm. The pattern was clear. The treatment was seamless. Then it was Dr. Diallo's turn. Mr. Reese did not smile. His gaze landed on her, not with recognition, but with blankness, as if he were processing something that didn't quite fit. Name. His tone was flat, devoid of the warmth offered to others. She provided it clearly. There should have been immediate recognition. Her name was tied to the event the hotel was hosting. Her booking was flagged as priority. Yet, Mr. Reese continued as though hearing it for the first time. And your reason for being here? The question hung in the air. Guests in front of her were welcomed as if they were expected. For her, the question was an invitation to defend her presence. She calmly explained she was checking in for the summit. She provided her digital confirmation, neatly displayed on her device. Mr. Reese glanced at the screen briefly, then returned his focus to the desk. Digital confirmation isn't always reliable. I'll need something else. No apology, no consideration, only doubt. Dr. Diallo offered her government-issued identification. Still, the pause lingered. Mr. Reese stepped away to confer with another employee. He didn't lower his voice. She claims she's here for the summit. His words and the way he emphasized claims suggested he'd already decided. She waited, steady and composed. But with every second, the distance between how others were treated and how she was handled became more visible. Mr. Reese returned, eyes hardened. Please wait here. Security will assist you. Assist. The word was spoken without weight, but the meaning was unmistakable. There was no call to the event organizers. No verification with the summit hosts. No attempt to resolve the situation with the care given to other guests. Instead, the security guard, Mr. Cade, approached with confident steps. His hand rested on his utility belt, his posture speaking before his words arrived. You'll need to step away from the desk. We can resolve this elsewhere. Resolve. Another word spoken with assumed authority. Dr. Diallo showed her reservation again, along with her itinerary and confirmation code. Mr. Cade glanced briefly, but didn't engage. His attention was fixed on removing her from the area. She wasn't loud. She didn't argue. She simply asked them to check the system again. Mr. Reese repeated the same phrase. It's not there. He hadn't looked. He hadn't checked. He had decided. Nearby, Maria, a junior employee stationed at a side terminal, paused in her typing. Her eyes flicked toward the scene unfolding. Her expression clouded with hesitation. She looked at Mr. Reese, then at Mr. Cade, but said nothing. Her silence stretched, heavy with complicity, but also with the quiet burden of fear. This was the first time Maria had witnessed a guest question like this, but she didn't speak. Dr. Diallo's calm remained intact, but the gap between procedure and her experience had widened to the point of exposure. The problem wasn't just a refusal. It was the pattern. She stood there, prepared, documented, present, yet the space around her had already made a decision. And yet, she stayed. Have you ever been questioned like you didn't belong? Have you ever felt your right to be somewhere was put on trial for no reason at all? If you have, drop "I belong" in the comments. Your story deserves to be heard. Like this video to help these stories reach more people. Subscribe so together we can continue shining a light on these everyday moments that should never be overlooked. Because what happens next isn't just about one person. It's about a system. And that system was about to meet someone they could no longer ignore. The marble lobby, once filled with soft conversation and the delicate sound of glassware, now held an edge, a sharp, uncomfortable silence. The weight of the unfolding scene pressed against every corner of the room. Security guard Mr. Cade stood directly in front of Dr. Diallo now, his arms crossed, his stance firm. His voice, though steady, carried an undertone of finality. You need to step aside. This area is for registered guests. Dr. Diallo calmly presented her reservation once again. Her confirmation remained unchanged. Her voice remained clear. I have a reservation. I'm here for the summit. I provided my documents. Mr. Cade shook his head, his posture unmoved. You failed to provide acceptable proof. I need you to leave the check-in area. His words drew the attention of surrounding guests. Some paused with half-filled glasses. Others glanced over brochures, as if the pages might provide them an escape from the uncomfortable tension building nearby. From behind the front desk, Maria's eyes flickered with visible unease. Her screen had clearly displayed Dr. Diallo's confirmed reservation just moments before. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the keyboard, her breathing quickening. She knew what she was seeing wasn't right. Yet, the weight of silence in that space held her in place. Across the lobby, whispers passed between guests. Some leaned toward one another, their curiosity overtaking their initial reluctance to watch. Mr. Reese didn't address the confirmation any further. He simply gestured toward a new arrival. A woman in a crisp blazer and carefully pinned name tag stepped forward. Miss Celeste, the floor manager. Her arrival did not bring resolution. Her gaze swept over Dr. Diallo, her expression carefully composed but distant. Perhaps you're in the wrong place, Miss Celeste said, her tone polished, her meaning unmistakable. The words were not a question. They were a directive. The other guests nearby continued to watch, their expressions shifting between discomfort and fascination, their feet planted as though they belonged to the floor. Dr. Diallo, steady but firm, repeated herself. I am here for the summit. I have provided all necessary documentation. Please check again. Ms. Celeste's expression hardened. We've checked. This area is reserved for guests of a certain tier. Our policy does not allow for unscheduled visitors. The unsaid assumption clung to the air. Maria, still at her terminal, slowly pushed her chair back, standing without fully realizing it. Her hands trembled, her mouth opened just slightly, but she said nothing. Her silence stretched, another thread in the tight fabric of complicity. Miss Celeste glanced at Maria, a subtle look that required no words. Maria slowly lowered herself back into her chair. Dr. Diallo's documents were in perfect order. Her name was on the summit registry. Her credentials were valid. None of it mattered. What followed next deepened the wound. Mr. Cade radioed for additional security support. Possible trespasser in the lobby, preparing to escort from the premises. The words hung there, as though they were simply following standard steps. But the message was clear to those listening. She was a problem to be removed. The surrounding guests continued to observe. Some lowered their heads, pretending to focus on their luggage or their phones. But they didn't move. Others exchanged quiet comments, their eyes drawn to the tension unfolding just feet away. Dr. Diallo's calm, though still intact, began to strain at the edges. Her voice tightened, her measured tone slightly harder now. Your system confirms my reservation. I am not trespassing. I am not loitering. I am not here by accident. Marcus, another security officer, arrived. His approach was slower, deliberate, carrying the same quiet authority as Mr. Cade. He positioned himself to the side, a silent signal that the next step was imminent. Marcus spoke briefly. Let's not make this difficult. It was a sentence designed to corner. Dr. Diallo held her ground. She could feel the weight of the stares, the judgment, the quiet calculation from the crowd, from the staff, from the layers of authority that had been built up in front of her. Maria, still at her station, finally took a small step forward, her voice almost imperceptible. The confirmation, it's in the system. Her words were thin, quickly swallowed by the surrounding noise, but Ms. Celeste caught them. Maria, please return to your station. The manager's voice was calm, but the instruction left no room for deviation. Maria hesitated, then sat back down, the spark of protest extinguished before it could fully ignite. Dr. Diallo's breathing remained steady, but she knew what this was. It wasn't just about one employee. It wasn't just about one mistake. It was about a system that routinely decided who belonged and who did not. Each refusal, each dismissive glance, each instruction to step aside had been made with the confidence of someone certain they would not be questioned. But that certainty was about to collapse. Dr. Diallo's calm was not submission. It was precision. She understood that stepping aside would not teach them the weight of what they had done. What would follow would not just correct this moment. It would force them to confront what their system had made them believe. Have you ever been placed in a position where you were surrounded, not just by people, but by silence? Where you knew you were right, but every voice around you worked to push you out? If you've ever been in that moment, drop "I see you" in the comments. Your story matters, like this video, so these conversations don't disappear. Subscribe to stand with stories that deserve to be told and heard, because the next chapter of this story isn't about a mistake. It's about the consequences that come when the truth finally steps forward. The silent weight in the lobby pressed in tighter. Security remained poised. Mr. Reese glanced toward the main entrance, waiting for additional support. Maria sat quietly, her shoulders drawn in, her earlier whisper already fading into the noise. Dr. Diallo's breathing was steady. Her calm remained intact, not as surrender, but as precision. The distant sound of approaching footsteps broke the frozen stillness. A voice cut across the tension, warm but firm, carrying a presence the staff instantly recognized. Imani? What's happening here? Heads turned. Mr. Alastair Finch, the well-known executive from a major partner company, stepped forward with deliberate pace. His expression shifted from confusion to deep concern as he took in the guarded stances, the tightened circle, the visible discomfort surrounding Dr. Diallo. Is there a problem here? His gaze landed sharply on Mr. Reese, then on Mr. Cade. There was a brief flicker in Mr. Reese's expression. A pause, a stammer, a scramble. Sir, we're handling a misunderstanding. Finch interrupted, his tone crisp. Do you have any idea who this is? The question struck with quiet force. The staff faltered. Mr. Reese blinked, unsure of how to answer. Mr. Cade took a step back, his earlier certainty now fractured. This is Dr. Imani Diallo. Finch continued, his voice rising just enough to reach the surrounding crowd. She's a keynote speaker. She's the one this entire summit is here to hear. She's a guest of honor. Silence followed. Recognition rippled across the faces of the hotel staff as the weight of the moment settled on their shoulders. The reception desk that had just moments ago been a place of dismissal now shifted into a center of sudden, frantic attention. We deeply regret the inconvenience. Mr. Reese began, his words tumbling over each other as he reached for pre-rehearsed apologies. "Please accept our sincerest apologies," Miss Celeste added quickly, her previous composure now replaced with polite urgency. Her hand fluttered as she gestured toward an upgraded suite, offering complimentary services, rapid check-in, immediate priority. Their words flooded the space, each trying to outpace the other, each racing to rebuild what had already collapsed. Dr. Diallo's calm did not waver. She did not reach for the suite keys. She did not soften. Her voice was measured. "That won't be necessary." The lobby, which had just a moment ago watched to be surrounded, now watched to be pursued, with eager service, polite tones, and careful offers. But something had already been exposed. The respect they now offered wasn't anchored in her humanity. It was tethered to her confirmed status. Without the arrival of Mr. Finch, without the public validation, would they have changed their stance? The answer sat heavily between them. Finch glanced toward Dr. Diallo, his expression a blend of frustration and recognition. He had seen moments like this before, though perhaps not this stark. The hotel manager approached, his words spilling quickly. "We can offer a full upgrade, priority services, executive lounge access, whatever is needed to correct this experience." Dr. Diallo held his gaze. You cannot correct what was never acknowledged in the first place. Her refusal of their offers was not rooted in anger. It was rooted in clarity. The issue was never about the room, the suite, or the amenities. It was about the decision made when they believed she held no influence. It was about the choice to disregard, to dismiss, to exclude, long before they knew who she was. Mr. Finch, now standing slightly to the side, did not interfere. His intervention had shifted the stakes, but he understood that the moment now belonged entirely to Dr. Diallo. Respect, the narrator's voice underscored, should never be conditional. It should never arrive after credentials are confirmed. It should never be something we earn. It should be something we are granted without question. Mr. Reese's hands fidgeted, his earlier certainty dissolving as his eyes darted between Dr. Diallo, Miss Celeste, and the security team. Maria, still at her station, watched the scene unfold. Her silence earlier had protected her position, but now it weighed heavily on her. Her glance toward Dr. Diallo was quiet, almost apologetic. But this wasn't about one employee's voice. It was about what the structure encouraged, what it overlooked, what it permitted. Dr. Diallo's response remained steady. "I will not be accepting your offers. I will, however, expect to speak directly with your executive leadership." There was no room for further negotiation. There was no performance to soften the edges. The hotel staff scrambled to facilitate her request, their urgency now framed by visible panic. The same system that had just tried to push her out was now rushing to hold the door open. But the shift in tone was not an act of remorse. It was an act of survival. Dr. Diallo did not seek comfort. She sought accountability. Because what was at stake wasn't simply her experience. It was the next person who would arrive, the next name that wouldn't be instantly recognized, the next voice that wouldn't have someone like Finch nearby to speak on their behalf. The lesson that lingered was clear. Respect that arrives only after status is confirmed is not genuine. It is not trust. It is not care. It is a transaction. And for too long, too many have been offered transactional acceptance instead of unconditional dignity. Within the hour, the senior leadership of the Viridian Grand Hotel arrived. Their expressions were careful, their words polished, their body language slightly tightened by the knowledge that something serious had unfolded. The general manager, Mr. Thorne, approached with deliberate steps. His greeting was formal, rehearsed. "We extend our deepest regrets regarding the misunderstanding. Our team's response fell far short of our expectations." His words hovered on the edge of comfort, carefully avoiding direct acknowledgement of the pattern that had unfolded in his lobby. Dr. Diallo listened without interruption. He continued, "We will be providing immediate upgrades, complimentary services, and our full attention to your needs for the remainder of your stay." She calmly replied, "I did not request upgrades. I requested accountability." The general manager's polished exterior faltered, just briefly. She continued, "This is not about gestures. It is about systems. I am not here to be compensated. I am here to ensure this does not happen again. Not to me, not to anyone else. His response leaned toward what he was used to offering. Standard apologies, scripted resolutions, surface-level solutions. We will conduct immediate training sessions with the team to prevent such occurrences in the future. Dr. Diallo met his gaze steadily. Training is not the answer if the structure remains untouched. She outlined her expectations with clarity. I expect your corporate office to commission an independent review of your customer engagement policies. I expect that review to be transparent. I expect a public report of those findings, not a closed meeting. The general manager paused, unsure how to navigate demands that extended beyond a checklist. She continued, superficial changes do not dismantle long-standing habits. I expect a commitment to regular independent audits. I expect those audits to track progress, not just completion. And I expect you to make these commitments publicly so that accountability does not fade once I leave this building. Her tone was not combative. It was deliberate. The leadership team exchanged glances, quickly realizing this conversation would not follow the usual rhythm. What you offered a moment ago, priority services, upgrades, that isn't a solution. It is a reaction. I am asking you to move from reaction to responsibility. She outlined specific steps. Third-party assessments of guest service procedures. Bias awareness programs that extend beyond scripted sessions. Public commitments to track progress, not just promises. She did not ask for immediate dismissals. She did not seek removal of individual employees. She focused on changing what had allowed the incident to happen in the first place. Moments later, Maria quietly approached, hesitation woven into each step. "May I speak with you privately?" she asked. Dr. Diallo nodded and stepped aside with her. Maria's words were soft, but steady. "I saw your name in the system. I saw the confirmation. I knew it was there. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know if I would be supported." There was no bitterness in Dr. Diallo's expression, only measured understanding. "Thank you for telling me now." Maria's voice faltered slightly, but she continued. "I didn't know how to challenge them, but I knew they were wrong. I want to be better than that next time." Dr. Diallo's response was gentle. "The next time you will be..." Maria's voice carried the quiet weight of someone beginning to see where courage is required. Not in grand moments, but in small ones. As Maria returned to her post, the broader lesson remained. This incident wasn't a simple mistake. It wasn't just a lapse in protocol. It was a reflection of what happens when spaces operate on assumptions, when respect is distributed based on perceived status rather than shared humanity. The leadership team agreed to the terms, not just to preserve their reputation, but because the absence of these changes would now stand visible to others. Dr. Diallo's decision to center systemic reform over personal gain shifted the entire dynamic. This was not about one hotel. It was not about one lobby. It was about structures that quietly sort people into categories, visible only when someone pushes back against them. Have you ever been offered something after the moment that mattered had already passed? Have you ever been presented with solutions when what you really needed was understanding? If you have, drop "I deserve better" in the comments. Like this video if you believe change requires more than empty promises. Subscribe to help stories like these reach the people who need to hear them. Because the next part of the story is not about one correction. It's about a movement towards something far more lasting. The incident at the Viridian Grand Hotel did not end in the lobby. It became a spark that traveled far beyond that polished floor. Dr. Diallo did not leave quietly. She transformed that experience into a platform. Within weeks, she began speaking publicly, not to recount a personal story, but to reveal a pattern woven into many spaces that claim to offer equal treatment. She partnered with organizations that focus on structural fairness in customer-facing industries. Together, they developed new approaches to address the quiet ways people are excluded, starting with the hospitality sector. Her focus was not on retribution. It was on rebuilding. She called for measurable changes. Hotels, restaurants, and service providers were no longer just expected to apologize when problems arose. They were asked to track their guest interactions, to report their patterns, to build systems that noticed and corrected bias in real time. Publicly, she challenged companies to move beyond slogans. Quiet pledges were no longer enough. Her message reached boardrooms where diversity statements had gathered dust. She demanded that those statements come with transparent action plans. Within a year, Dr. Diallo's initiative expanded into a foundation that created detailed accountability frameworks for businesses in travel, dining, and corporate services. These frameworks provided tools to measure the fairness of customer experiences, not just on paper, but in daily operations. Her work was not theoretical. It was practical. It changed the way companies trained their teams, the way they measure success, and the way they listened to those they had once ignored. But her impact did not stop with policy. She also created leadership circles, a network of support for young professionals stepping into industries where they often found themselves isolated. In private sessions and mentoring programs, she listened to their concerns, answered their questions, and made space for their voices. She understood the exhaustion that comes with navigating environments where silent judgment lingers. She understood the emotional strain that often arrives with the need to constantly shift between versions of oneself to fit in. For many, the ability to adapt, to move fluidly between expectations, had become a survival skill. But it was a skill that came with a cost. The quiet weight of adjusting one's tone, appearance, or language to avoid scrutiny slowly eroded confidence. Dr. Diallo named that weight. She gave those experiences language, not as isolated events, but as shared realities. She taught those she mentored that their worth did not rest in how well they could adjust, but in how fully they could lead as themselves. Her message resonated because it reached into stories that often went untold. The incident at the Viridian Grand was not rare. It joined a growing list of public cases that had exposed these silent habits. There had been a man removed from a hotel lobby despite being a paying guest. There had been a group waiting in a coffee shop, questioned and escorted out before they could place an order. There had been customers passed over, dismissed, or followed while shopping, all because their presence was quietly marked as unusual. These were not isolated moments. They were symptoms of something larger. Dr. Diallo's work highlighted that the issue was not only in how people were treated when they were recognized, but in how quickly they were questioned when they were not. She used these public cases to support her message. The problem was systemic, not occasional. Her foundation built partnerships with universities, service organizations, and advocacy groups to expand the conversation. She introduced education programs that did not simply explain what bias was. They illustrated how it lived in procedures, in silence, in the choices made when nobody appeared to be watching. Her speeches became fixtures at major industry conferences. She did not speak with bitterness. She spoke with precision. She did not accuse, she revealed. She asked leaders to examine not just their policies, but their assumptions. She challenged them to ask themselves who their spaces were truly designed to welcome and who they quietly expected to prove their place. Behind the scenes, her leadership circles grew. Young professionals shared their experiences. The first times they were passed over, the first times they were asked to show extra documentation, the first times their voices were softened to be more acceptable. They also shared their victories. The moments they stood firm, the moments they no longer adjusted to fit, but demanded that the space adjust to them. Dr. Diallo celebrated those moments. She reminded them that progress was not always visible to everyone, but it was deeply felt by those who carried the weight of being overlooked. Her story became more than a memory. It became a blueprint. It reminded people that change is not built in apology. It is built in structure. It is not measured in single incidents. It is measured in the systems we create to prevent them. Her movement did not promise to fix every space overnight. It promised to build spaces where questioning someone's right to be there was no longer the reflex. It promised to bring people together, not perform change, but to live it. Have you ever carried the weight of adjusting yourself just to be accepted? Have you ever chosen silence because speaking felt like too much? If you have, drop no more adjusting in the comments. Like this video if you believe spaces should welcome you as you are. Subscribe to help these stories reach the people who need to hear them. Because the next story might not be told if we stop telling this one. There is something that should never need to be proven. Respect. It should not arrive after titles are confirmed. It should not depend on visible status. It should not wait for outside validation. It should arrive with our humanity. Dr. Diallo's experience, though personal, reflects a deeper pattern that echoes in many spaces. The quiet weight of having to constantly present credentials, the repeated requirement to show documents, to explain presence, to defend the right to simply stand in a space. These moments are not loud. They unfold in soft refusals, in doubting glances, in questions that other guests are never asked. But the burden is heavy. It is the exhaustion of walking into places where welcome is conditional. It is a fatigue of knowing that being prepared may still not be enough. It is a quiet pressure to adjust, to soften, to make others comfortable, simply to stay. This weight is not carried alone. It is a shared experience that many know too well. There is a silent expectation that proof must always be ready, that acceptance comes only after approval. But it should never be this way. Respect should not be earned through extra steps. It should not be granted based on assumptions of influence. It should not arrive after someone else confirms worth. It should begin where we begin. Spaces should not first ask for status. They should first offer dignity. The story of Dr. Diallo is not just hers. It belongs to every person who has stood in a place and felt that their presence required explanation. Her decision to push beyond the moment, to seek change that outlasts her visit, reminds us that correction is not enough. Correction without transformation leaves the door open for the next incident. Real change happens when respect becomes the starting point, not the reward. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to defend your right to be seen? Have you ever stood silently, hoping someone would speak up on your behalf? If you have, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters here. Like this video if you believe dignity should never be delayed. Subscribe if you want to help amplify stories that challenge the systems that make these moments possible. Because these stories are not just about individuals. They are about all of us. And when we tell them, when we share them, we create the pressure that makes space for something better. The next time you stand in a space where someone is questioned, where someone is pushed aside, where someone's presence is challenged, remember that silence protects the problem. Challenge your assumptions. Speak when it matters. Together, we can build places where respect is not measured, but given, where dignity is not negotiated, but guaranteed, where welcome is not earned. It simply is.